Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Apply heading 230. Runway 27 left. Clear for takeoff. Turn right heading 060. Descend and maintain 5,000.
All right, yo! Hi, welcome to the CptsLogs podcast. I am Richard Tolo, the one and only authentic, crispy Jamaican bacon, as usual. We got the one good pilot here, Mr. Mark Attack. How are you doing today?
Doing all right for Sunday. Not too shabby.
Oh, it is Sunday. Yet. Anyways, welcome back. We have once again VIP guest here. I've mentioned this before. He's been on the podcast before. It's his second time. We'll be back in the future. But in the last podcast, I did say he is somebody that's relatively important to me because he was the one that signed me off for my private pilot. If it wasn't for this guy, you wouldn't have seen this greatness. So, first name, I want to welcome Cameron. Welcome back, my friend. How you doing today?
Doing well. I appreciate the intro there. By the way, that intro monologue you guys have, that gets you jacked up, man. Jeez. Makes me want to go fly right now.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Yeah. Actually, the ladies and gentlemen, actually the turn right heading 150. It's actually a clip that I went in and I found that and I stick it in there and the music. I was like, oh shit, that sounds good. So yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So
that gets it jacked.
Cool, man. So we're just gonna run in here. We'll have some conversation. We'll talk. I'll leave here, Cameron. I'll start off with some basic, information, and Mark will jump in every so often. But we'll just chat. So, Cameron, I've known Cameron for, well, we've met years ago. He was actually one of my first instructors, as I mentioned. Since then, I've gotten to the airline. I've been doing that back and forth. But how have you been, Cameron? What are you doing? Are you currently in town in Phoenix?
I'm in East Mesa to be exact, but yeah, still holding it down here in Arizona. So yeah, last time I think we all hopped on a show. That was probably good 4 or 5 years ago, almost now, maybe 4 years ago.
Is it been that long?
Oh my God, dude. Well, because yeah, I believe I was. I know I was not with my current employer I'm with now, and I've been with them for 3 years. So,
bro,
yeah, so it's been a little while, but no, happy to catch it up.
Yeah, man, definitely.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. I live here in Phoenix. Got a couple dogs, my wife. Life there is good, but from a work standpoint, I've been flying for a Part 91 owner. Awesome family. They have themselves a nice trucking business. But just me and another pilot. We've been flying exclusively for them for the last 3 years. It's been awesome. And so no complaints.
This is the crazy thing. The crazy thing about all this is you mentioned that you're on 5 years ago. I was sitting down last night watching WWE. This is like a little segue here as we're leading here, but there's a clip of like a wrestling platform, and I remember specifically. I remember the date and time sitting there watching that. Like I know where I was. I knew what was going on. I remember exactly what was going on when I was watching that. And then something popped up and it was like, that was 20 years ago. And I was like, hold on. Yeah, I was like, how is that 20 years ago? I'm like, that dude is crazy. But I remember the very first time, going into UND and meeting you and, flying to Archer and all that stuff, that's pretty interesting. So let's go back to that. As we go back into the past and kind of reintroduce you and all that stuff. Did you finish your stuff at UND in Grand Forks, or did you actually finish your private pilot at the Phoenix campus? I'm just curious.
I did everything. I did private all the way through my ATP. Now technically that ending part wasn't technically with UND. I just used an UND aircraft to do it. But I did everything at the Phoenix campus. So
at the Phoenix campus.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't transfer to Grand Forks. The only reason why I would have had to have done that is if I wanted to get my 4-year degree through UND. that at the time, that was their requirement. They only got you through your associates. And so, you could get all of your training done with them there, but if you want to get your degree, you had to go to Grand Forks. And so I did kind of a little sidestep to Embry-Riddle. And I got my degree through them, just again here in Phoenix with their satellite campus. Did night school, but yeah, I did all the flight training through the Gateway location there.
Okay, got you. Do you remember who sent you off for your private pilot? You remember?
God,
Or was
I
it
went.
right-
It was a weird time for aviation because that was
man.
right. Yeah, that was. Well, it was. They were there. It was before we had the crash and the financial crisis, and before the airlines all went to shit. So at the time, back in 2004, which was when I started, the airlines, particularly the regionals, you had pilots getting hired at like 400 hours, 500 hours, which obviously doesn't happen today. But back then,
that was a pre-ATP stuff.
Right? Yeah, that was all pre the Buffalo Airways crash that changed all that. So I went through 3 private instructors in my private training, which I think anyone who's gone through flight training will tell you that makes it a little bit challenging, especially for that first rating. So I'm trying to think who did sign me off. I want to say it was a guy by the name. I want to think it was a guy by the name of Dustin Holmes.
Guess what, Cameron? We have Dustin Holmes with us.
Yeah, he's coming to us live.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I believe it was him. Yeah. Like I said, I had 3 at the point where I finished my private. So
that sucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. So was Rex in charge of the platform back then at UND?
No,
all that stuff
Rex didn't come in until I was starting my multi-engine. I think Rex came in right around 2006, 2007 time period. So yeah, I didn't meet Rex until I actually had come off a break. I took about a year off from flight training. I just got kind of burnt out. And so when I came back, Rex was the new site manager, and he was a breath of fresh air for that whole place and for me. So that was a real pivotal point for me where I was able to, really kind of kick it into high gear and get my multi-engine, get the CFI done, get hired, and then work on my II, MEI, and the rest was history.
Yeah, it's kind of good to go into that linear path, talking about, getting your certification and the process mentally. I'm not sure. You probably know this, Cameron, but I started my flight training back over there at West Wind, right? Dump a bunch of chunk of change there. You know this? Yeah.
I don't think I knew that, no.
No, yeah. So my initial flight was over there at West Wind, and like I said, dump a bunch of chunk of change there, which is, by the way, people, just remember that's what aviation is, dumping change everywhere. But same thing, went through a phase where involuntarily had to take time off because I involuntarily ran out of money. so I couldn't afford flight training. Oh yeah, man. So people need to, like, especially now. I'm not sure what the industry is like right now. I'm kind of curious to see what people are going through, but it's almost like a standard. You go through this phase, you get a taste of it, and all of a sudden you're out of money. And then you somehow have to figure out, or you get burnt out or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty cool. So I've always known, since I've met you, that the airline, like Part 121, was not the path that you wanted to pursue. In fact, you're really vocal about it, and so it's pretty interesting. So if you don't mind, just give me like a general, overview of why that is. Because just for the audience, we talked about this before, and then we'll lead into what you're doing, the aircraft, and then the lifestyle, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, full disclosure to all my airline friends out there, because I have a ton of them. This is not a knock on their career. This is just more of a personal preference that I have always just kind of held. And I'll be honest with you, it didn't happen overnight. It was something that I think when I first started becoming a student pilot, going through your private, your instrument, it really wasn't until I got to really probably my multi-engine that I started to kind of think outside of, life as an airline pilot. But I would say that, I mean, and I'll come back to this part here, but I'll tell you the main reason why it never really appealed to me was, one, I like the interaction, the more of the, personal dynamic that comes with private aviation, commercial, we'll call it business aviation. Business aviation, kind of, brings in the private side, the, charter side, all that kind of stuff. So we'll just say business aviation in general. It just appealed to my personality more. I liked the idea of knowing the people I'm flying, interacting with, the passengers, being able to, partake in certain things on the road. And, that the airline never really, I think, showed that it had that element to it to me. Now, to a degree, there might be some of the stuff that, pilots can argue they can do. But I mean, by and large, that was one of the main driving points. But I will tell you that, I did have kind of a period when I was already flight instructing for, I think it was almost 4 years at this point, which is significantly longer than most people flight instruct for. But again, this was now, I was, that was during, again, kind of the 2008, 2009, 2010 market of aviation, which was
tough times.
Brutal, right? Yeah. So, the idea of going to the regionals or the airlines, everything else aside, it just didn't look like it was going to be a good time to go. But I remember I came close. I was getting kind of not burnt out as a flight instructor, but I was, I was in a weird place where I didn't have any, any resources or networks with the corporate side at that point. And I kind of felt like if I don't get out now, I might just be, delaying progress on my career. And so there was a point that I actually did apply to, I think it was called American Eagle. I don't even know if they're still around. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. But at the time, I think it was American Eagle. They were, I had applied to a regional, and they had called me, and the whole interview was going to be set up. I had to submit some paperwork and all that stuff, but it was pretty much like you come out and interview, and like to get a job. And I remember sitting at UND, sitting in the break room there, if you guys remember that. Back in the kitchen area where everyone kind of congregated when we were waiting for lessons or whatever. Rex came back there, the site manager, and he knew about it, and he just he sat me down. He said, I don't see you being happy at the airlines, and he said, I just think you really need to take a day or two to really think about this, and I just don't think you're going to be happy. And then he kind of said, I think if you stay put here. And at the time, UND was on the cusp of getting a contract, an international airlines contract. We hadn't had one yet at that Phoenix site. And so the idea was that he said, if we got a contract and you got to be, the lead on that contract and get some management experience, et cetera, he said, I think that will really help segue you to the corporate side. And, I took a couple of days, thought about it, and he was right. I mean, I knew he was right. I wouldn't have been happy going to the airlines. The flying alone probably, I think, would have gotten to me after a while. But the whole 2020 side of it was Rex was actually right, and a year later, from that conversation, I had landed my first corporate job. So
okay, a year after that, okay. So
a year after that conversation,
interesting. I think, this is my opinion, you probably would have enjoyed the flying, the airline flying, the button pushing and the turning and all that stuff, because it can be exciting, like flying into O'Hare and
Sure.
I know you're a pilot, you like to fly, but you probably would not have enjoyed everything else that comes with it, and there's a lot of nonsense that comes with it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's just the politics and it's almost like interesting. It's almost like you getting elected as an official, like you go into politics, you get elected, and you picked I don't know, maybe you go in as like a Democrat, you want like a seat, and then you walk into the room and you got the Republicans on one side, Democrat on one side, same thing. You get to the airline, either you're a company man or a union
Yeah.
man. You gotta
Yeah.
pick,
You got to
and
pick.
it's like,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. So, but
Well,
yeah,
and that's a fair point. I mean, and again, being that I've never actually done the 121, the closest I came to do anything, outside of Part 91 was the 135 charter for about almost 2 years.
yeah,
And that is even, I think, drastically different than the airlines. Obviously, I will say this about the airlines. I think that one aspect that actually is nice is that it is very consistent, and you can, as a pilot, once you have, especially nowadays, you have a lot more say and control over your schedule than you used to.
hmm
That aspect of it, I don't, I don't doubt is not amazing. Because even with my job, that I would argue is one of the best corporate jobs you can have. We still don't get to pick our schedule. Obviously, we've got to go when they want to go.
yeah,
I have friends all the time that can drop their whole schedule for a month, and nobody calls
yeah,
them, and
yeah,
nobody bothers
yeah,
them. Obviously, if we want to do that, we've got to take vacation time or PTO or all that stuff. So I understand that aspect of it a lot, and I
100%.
think that there are certain personalities that really is a value to. But
Yeah.
the all the other aspects of it, and to your point, Richard, talking about getting to fly into O'Hare and all that stuff, we don't go into O'Hare, not because we can, we just don't, because that's just not something they go to. But at other jobs
Yeah.
I've had, even this one, I mean, we do go into a lot of the big international airports quite constantly. I mean, we go to, Atlanta, we go to Midway, we go into Fort Lauderdale, we go into Sky Harbor, but we also go into Sedona, and we go to Costa Rica, and we go to, a lot of these airports that are way out in the middle of nowhere, that you haven't heard anything on the radio for like 20 minutes before you finally just land. You just
Yeah,
so
man.
that aspect of it I like, because you do get a good. It's well diversified in terms of the flying that you do.
Well,
I
we'll
think
we'll segue into we'll talk about the company you work for, and we'll get to that in a second. But you did mention you're right. I think that is when it comes to the schedule, that is a very important part. Because I've done the 135. I did it for Mark. I did it for what was it, like a couple months, a month. So
oh
there,
yeah,
there was a
they're
phase.
still waiting. They're still waiting for their training money back.
Anyways, well, by the way, Cameron, it'll be fun. It's a funny story. Because there's a phase in my life where I went through a little phase where I thought, okay, maybe I'll test out this little water of the corporate stuff, and I just did not. I did not like it, right? And that was one of the main things, was the schedule. And they
Yeah.
say you want to burn bridge in aviation, but I'll tell you what that bridge got I blew the crap. That bridge is still on fire, bro. Like I was like, I wanted nothing to do with this, And
Yeah.
it was mainly the schedule stuff. And it's interesting because the company I work for now is a Part 121 supplemental. So you probably look whatever that means. It's scheduled, non-scheduled. It falls in the Part 121 rules when it comes to the rest rules and all that stuff, but it's not scheduled operation. So I do the exact same thing in a sense, kind of what you do, and we do fly into all these airports around the world, large airports, and we do stay away from those larger international airports because you're so busy.
Yeah.
Because it's cost effective, obviously, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Except we're flying a 7.6. So it's almost the same thing, except we have the 121 Part 121 rule. The kind of things we do. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, we flew the Texas Rangers from out of Seattle to Dallas, and it was kind of an interesting thing. But the thing that I wouldn't be able to handle is just not knowing my schedule like ahead of time. I just can't do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, again, I mean, and again, every operator is different. I mean, the job I have now, we know our schedule several weeks in advance, which is really nice.
Oh, okay.
But that's not really standard. I have flown for other companies and other, again, still business aviation, Part 91. But I mean, yeah, you would think you knew your schedule, but then they would change it on you, 24 hours notice, and you'd find out that you're doing something completely different, or you thought you had a couple days off, and you find out you don't. And that
Yeah.
that got hard. That is tough. It's not easy. and it's definitely
Yeah.
not for everyone.
I could do that if it's within my work schedule, which is what it is now. It's almost the same thing. So if I know I'm supposed to be at work and I'm on for 5 days, right? And
Mhm.
today I could be working, but I could be going left, or I could be going right, or I could be going east, or I could be going west, but it changes.
Mhm.
I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Also, I need to know that once I'm done, I'm done. None of this,
Yeah.
you know, so I can deal with that. What I can't do is you're on 24/7 on calls
Yeah.
nonstop. Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
no,
tough for me. But anyway,
and I don't recommend that personally either. I mean, I think that everyone's got to
okay.
start somewhere. I think that there are some jobs that sometimes that it's just more about getting experience, and maybe you got to put up with that for a little bit. But the idea is that
Okay.
I mean, I don't think anybody, unless you are really just one of those true road warriors that just loves that random chaotic kind of has a go bag ready. I mean, some people do like that. But yeah,
Mhm.
that would never work for me either in the long, on a
Oh,
long
okay.
term
So
situation.
generally, that's you basically graduate from something like that. Generally, in your industry, so you might start off doing that.
Yeah, I think again, I think there are some and it's getting better. I will say that because of the airlines, the interesting thing with the industry is that they all kind of share in success and they all kind of share in failure. All segments of it. But traditionally, I think that when the airlines do well, and the airlines have had a really good couple years, and they've been on this big hiring boom, and they're all the quality of life, the pay structure, all that stuff has really gone up. Well, that has had a big impact on the Part 91 business aviation sector as well. So you have a lot of operators that used to get away with kind of treating their pilot and their employees and their schedule kind of less than ideal because they could get away with it because the pilots didn't necessarily have anywhere else to go,
Okay.
and nowadays the airlines are constantly scooping guys up, and people who want to keep good pilots, and that's kind of the caveat there is if you have to have the right people running the show. You have to have the right owners of the company or the right organization that you're flying for that have to understand the value in keeping good quality pilots. I mean, some don't care. They just want to run them like they're contractors, and that's how they'll treat you, and then that's what you're going to get. But there are a lot of jobs out there that truly do value the pilots and the flight crew and the everything that goes in with that. And they're paying more, and they're honoring a quality of life balance that used to not really be that high on the priority scale for them. So I think you're going to see more of that as the airlines continue to just keep taking up good pilots. So
Okay. Okay. I mean, I understand that. I see what you're saying. That it's a demand thing. If there's if there's enough pilots, if there's not enough, if just like any industry, if there's a shortage on pilots, then they have to treat the pilots a little better compared to
they're forced to make some changes. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. All right. We'll segue into let's talk about. I'm curious currently what you're working on. We'll talk about some of my stuff, and then we'll also transition to Mark. We'll talk about for people who are watching and want to know the different types of areas. Part 91, Part 135,
Mhm.
Part 121. What's cargo? I don't know. Part 119. I'm just making that up. I don't know, dude. Yeah. We'll talk about. Let's talk about your currently, like, what part you're currently working for. If you want to go into the company, if you want to talk about the company, and then basically, I'll ask you some questions on how you got there. But if you want to start off there, you said it was a Part 91. Can I explain what that is?
Yeah. No. Part 91. Just again another rules of which the company is governed by for the federal aviation regulations. It just basically tells us when we're flying our aircraft what we can and can't do. Covers the rest requirements, which basically in Part 91 there are none. But I mean, so we kind of self-govern ourselves in that regard. But no, the company that I work for is actually managed by a company called Solaris Aviation. So Solaris Aviation is a management company, and they have I think something 300
How do you
different
spell that?
Solaris. It's SOLAIRUS. Solaris Aviation. Good company, great company. Like I said, I've been with them now for 3 years. So they manage 300 plus airplanes, all mix of different jets and whatever else they have. They have some aircraft that are under a 135 certificate, and they have some that are under Part 91 certificate. So we're under Part 91. And all they are, again, they're a management company, so they don't really get involved in the actual
okay. Gotcha.
day-to-day stuff with our operation.
Is this it here? Can you see that?
Yep, that's them. Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great company. But the owners that we work for, who own the company, who owns the jet, they hired this company to manage it for them. So it just makes things simpler. But the nice thing is, for us as the flight crew, Solaris being as large as they are, we kind of get, I will say, we kind of get a little bit of that 121 kind of, assistance. I mean, we have a flight coordinator, we have dispatch, we have, any department we need help with. We have our own maintenance mechanic. Everything is, kind of a la carte for us when we need it. So, we still do our own flight planning. We still, determine the fuel loads, kind of like, that's not really, airlines take care of all that stuff for their crew.
Mm-hmm.
We get it. We still do all that. But I mean, our flight coordinator takes care of all of our passengers' needs, their hotel, their catering, their rental cars, where traditionally, if it was just us, we'd be in charge of doing that as well. So we really get to focus mostly on just the flying aspect of it, which is nice. But we have we get eyes on everything, so we can always, we can help and assist if need be, or we can make changes if we need to. So anyway, that's kind of the Solaris side of things. It's a good structure.
So Solaris is they're the management company. So do you work for Solaris or do you work for the?
Technically speaking, yes. So we are employed by Solaris, but that's more of like corporate structure stuff. That is
okay.
Yeah. I mean, Solaris, that's more just for the paperwork, so to speak.
Okay.
The owners that we work for and their company that they own, they write the checks, but it goes to a separate account within Solaris that Solaris gets to manage, and then Solaris, pays us, and they pay for any, all the jet expenses, all that stuff comes through that account. Because they are managing it.
And
so
the owners, I'm just like drafting this out. So in business, man, you understand how people do these things, try to make this as structurally efficient on their side as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the owners, are they like owners? Are they like a multi-million-dollar family that owns that jet, and then they're just having someone managing it, or is it a company that owns the jet and then having Solaris managing it? Do you know, or can you say?
Well, yeah, I won't go into specifics about their company per se.
Okay,
but I will say, so no, it's a wonderful husband and wife, and the husband actually, he started this company with his two other brothers before, but they're no longer involved as much now. But so yeah, the way it works is they're a blue collar couple. I mean, you would not know they have the kind of money they have, and that's one of the beautiful things about them. But no, so the way it works is they own the company that is this trucking company, and that company, the jet is owned by that company. So and again, that's all just for it's obviously because they use it for business. They use it, and they get to depreciate it and tax incentives and all those kind of things. But then the only thing Solaris is really involved in is more for protection and separation of assets and liability and all that stuff. Yeah,
gotcha.
And they'll be able to, they provide the maintenance personnel that we have. They provide all the financial stuff that comes up. They take care of all that. It just makes their life easier.
So who do you fly?
Great question. So we fly the owner and his wife. Primarily, but we also fly a handful of the company, we'll call them, the executives, the C-suite people, the president, the director of HR. I mean, and then it kind of trickles down from there. They're not a huge company, but there's a handful of people that we fly pretty routinely. They go to different site locations. They, whatever their business demands that they need the jet for.
Okay.
That's what we'll help them out with. But then the owners, they have houses kind of all across, the country and out of the country. So, we'll take them to their personal residence and that kind of stuff for vacations and things of that nature. So it's, we kind of do both sides of it.
Okay, got you. Understand. Makes sense. Just in case anybody wants to get into that type of platform or type of flying. So what are some of the, obviously, there's definitely some pros with that kind of flying.
Oh, yeah.
What's in the, yeah. Let's talk about the flying aspect itself. We'll get into like the lifestyle stuff, but the flying, obviously you do your own flight plan and all that stuff. You prefer that kind of stuff? Are those you consider that pros or cons?
I consider it pro. Now, only because it kind of keeps you, I think, more engaged and kind of looking at things ahead. We run a very professional operation. My co-pilot and I, it's just us two. The guy, so we're both captains. My boss, he's the chief pilot. He's a former F-18 pilot. He's done the Navy, he's done the airlines, he's done corporate. So he's been at it for a long time. He's 65 now. But just an exceptional pilot and mentor. So we take it really seriously, obviously, and the pros of it is that we get to fly this jet in a manner that is pretty much like the airlines. Like I said, we can go in and out of the big airports. We're based out of Ontario, California. That's where the jet stays. So we go in and out there to depart and to bring the jet home. If anyone's not familiar, it's a pretty big airport. They get they get a good amount of cargo and airline traffic in there. The flying is nice because we can, like I said, we can do all the airline style flying. We can go into all the big airports. We can do all the, long haul kind of stuff, but we also get to go into a lot of smaller airports, the uncontrolled airports. We get to kind of control that airplane, to the best that we see fit for whatever the mission, is at hand.
I guess
I like the freedom that comes with that.
Yeah, I guess another thing to ask is like, what aircraft do you fly? I'm going to ask you some other things, but
No,
you
right
were flying,
now, yeah.
What were you flying last time? Were you flying the same thing?
I probably was flying the same thing because I was. So I'm actually flying a Falcon 2000 Classic.
Okay, that's what it is.
Right now, which is a great jet, Dassault. 10-seater. Ours is like a Falcon 2000 plus because we have the winglets and upgraded avionics in it. But it's a great airplane. This is their first jet they purchased, and they'll be looking to upgrade, I'm sure, to something, probably stay within the Falcon family, but maybe a little bit bigger. They're undecided yet, but it's a great performing jet. It has a service ceiling of 47,000 feet, so we can get up there.
Nice.
They can cruise. We cruise around 47.
God damn.
Yeah. Now you got to be kind of light to get up there. We pretty much live between 410 and 450.
Okay.
But we can get up to 47 if we get light enough. But that's just more bragging rights than anything.
Let me see if I can show it here. And I'm going to talk about the training here. It's a nice little aircraft there, bro. Falcon.
It's your kind of stock picture you find.
Yeah. And let's see here. It's kind of interesting having. I'm gonna talk about that dual captain thing there in a second here because there was an interesting case in. Let me show this real quick before I into that. Let's see here, so people can know what you. It's like a sweet little thing. Let's see. Share. So I'm testing this out here. Oh. The hell? Stop screen. Oh, I wish. Okay. All right. Is that it there? Not this aircraft particularly, but
yeah, that's it. Yeah. So just add some winglets to it, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about. I'm gonna jump back a little bit, and you're currently working for this company. What's the process? the application process that you yourself went through, and then interview and hiring process. We'll talk about the application process, and then so someone wants to follow in your lead. What do you think they would need to do in order to move
Mhm.
into this step? You know, efficiency, cleanness, logbook. I know that was a big thing when I was going through. I went back to American Eagle. There were people getting kicked out of interview because their logbook was shit.
Yeah,
Excuse my language.
I've
You know,
heard the stories. Yeah,
yeah,
heard
I
the
do. Like
stories.
I've had people walk in and walk back out because they're not even
Yeah,
an interview.
yeah.
So yeah, what's the like if you're looking for a job like this? Did they reach out to you or do you reach out to them? In a sense.
I would say probably more times than not, you're going to be reaching out to them.
Okay.
There is such a thing about networking, which I'll probably hit on a few times
Yeah.
on this topic. But yeah, once you get to a certain point where you've been in the business aviation side of it for a while, it's a small community. I mean, I know everyone says that about everything, but it really is a small community on the business side, especially when you're based out of airports like Scottsdale, Orange County, I mean, West Coast in general. Your name will start to get passed around if you're a good pilot, and if you have the proper credentials to maybe help out other companies that maybe have the same airplane, and now maybe they're looking. You'd be surprised that sometimes your phone does ring saying, "Hey, there's an opening at this company. They're looking for a pilot. You're typed in it. Would you have an interest in it?" So that does start to happen once you've spent enough time. But it takes time, and you got to have a good reputation. You got to be, some of the things you already hit on. You have to be professional. You have to be, well kept. You have to be obviously a good pilot. But some of the nuances, the logbook stuff. I mean, I think that's important. Is it really the focus of what these companies are concerned about? No. There's a certain level of integrity that I think is just assumed. That when you come into an interview, you're going to present your flight time, your logbook, whatever the case is. And, ultimately that will come down to the chief pilot or whoever is running that flight department that will decide whether or not you meet the qualifications. Insurance is obviously another aspect of it.
Yeah.
So, but no, I would say that anyone starting, for me, the way it worked was I had to go out and get it. I had a network. There wasn't a online, some jobs, I think there are HR requirements that, companies have to post job postings, but a lot of times, you'll find that the decision's already been made on who they're going to hire. They're just doing that for formality purposes. So I would say, not to discourage anyone from going out there and applying for jobs, but I think that in this segment particularly, especially for the good jobs, the ones that everyone is kind of trying to get after, your best bet is to go and get in front of the people who are in that operation. You just got to put yourself out there. You got to contact them, meet them, take them out to lunch, offer to come by and just, introduce yourself to them, bring some coffee, do anything you can to get yourself in front of them and, share with them that you are, interested if an opportunity ever came up that you would like to be able to, be considered. And just see where it goes. Sometimes, it may not happen right away, and sometimes they may just tell you, no, but they also might know of other opportunities that are going on. So,
I do think in the in this industry particularly, even though it's a small, even the airline industry is a small community, right? Aviation. Even though you might know somebody that might give you an opportunity, based on what I've seen, man, like you just said, you have to go out and go get it yourself. You got to go up. You got to get up. You got to go do the meet and greet. You got to when the airline particularly, obviously, if it's 121, there are 121, requirements with the the 1500 rules and all that stuff that goes with that, right? Obviously, but generally, when I was getting hired on with American Eagle, they were like, okay, I want you to sticker. You met this requirement and this requirement and this requirement and so forth and blah, 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 and blah. And I almost felt like it was more of just to see if you were able to listen and follow instructions appropriately based on what they said. And if you can't do that, how are you going to be able to come in,
Right.
and follow instructions to be able to, in a sense. So I think particularly with the airline, that's a big thing overall.
Right.
So, but
and that makes sense. I mean, I think attention to detail is probably it's critical to both sides. But and
Definitely.
I'm sure I think any of us could understand this though. Liking the people that you're working with. And that's probably where the corporate side is a little bit different than the airlines. I think the airlines will tell you, we want to make sure we're hiring the right people who can get along with the other guys on the road, because that's important, But at the end of the day, the airlines, I mean, obviously, Richard, you could tell me, but how often on the 121 side do you fly with the same pilot,
yeah,
given month, right?
Yeah.
Probably pretty rare.
Yeah. Even this company I'm with right now, where, like, for example, American Airline has about 15,000. Well, how many pilots they have? Like 15,000, crap like that. Anyways, American Eagle, I think they have like 3,000 pilots or something like that, right? This company I'm with right now, we have around 300 pilots, right? So less. Even with 300 pilots, you don't fly with it. You hardly ever see the same guy ever. You never see the same guy or the same crew like at a larger airline. Never.
Right.
Like I think Noli said that when he flew with that FO, it was the first time he ever flew with that. He's been with the airline for. We lost Mark. He's been with the airline for whatever it is, but he's never flown with any. He's never flown with that FO before. But jump back in here. There he is. Lost you there, Mark. Where'd you go?
Sorry about that.
There he is.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. No. I would just say that the difference with the corporate side is that you're going to have maybe anywhere like for myself right now, it's me and this other pilot. My last job, there was 5 of us. My job before that, there was just 2 of us. I mean, it's just so you're going to be. It's much more intimate in terms of you're going to spend a lot of time with these people, and so when they're looking to hire you, just going back to your question about what should people be thinking about when they're going into these interviews or what they're you have to really be somebody that can kind of be, I would say, arguably, be genuine, be authentic, but they're looking to make sure that you are someone that they can stand being with on the road for however long they fly or however long their trips are, because you're going to be seeing them a lot, so it's important.
I will say that about this company I work for. I can't say the name, unfortunately, but I will say, man, it's like the layovers are really great, and they're long too, because we do long hauls, right? So you get into Hawaii, it's a 6-hour day. You're in Hawaii for a week, or you might be in like in Bulgaria or somewhere in the Middle East. You fly in the Middle East? You ever been over that there?
No, never been.
What you thought about the? I'll ask you this. Just be conservative the way you answer it.
No.
What's you like Dubai and like Qatar and bro?
No, I think being able to fly there is obviously. I mean, I'm assuming it's safe when you do it. I'm assuming most companies try to avoid the hazardous routes, I would imagine. But here's my thing: is I'm not built for long haul flying. I'm just not. Like you're talking to a guy that's
me either, bro. But I do it.
6 hours in the airplane. I want off. I mean, I just. I do. I'm just like
Mark's like 2 hours. Mark's like an hour and a half. I need to get. I need that.
It's just some people are built for it, some aren't. I just it never really appealed to me. I respect the guys who can do it. Now, don't get me wrong. Going to those destinations, I think, would be awesome. But I mean, we went to Europe a couple weeks ago, and that was for me the furthest I had even gone in my career at this point. I mean, I've flown to Hawaii, I've flown to Costa Rica. Those are all 5-hour legs from the West Coast. But going over to Europe, that took us a couple of legs, couple of stops, and I mean, we got all the way over into Austria, Vienna. We were,
nice.
I mean, we were over in Bucharest.
I've been to Vienna. Vienna's nice.
Romania. I mean, so
we were in Romania. Nice, man.
Yeah. So we got pretty deep, I guess you'd say. But then
That's
having to fly
deep.
back home. Yeah, flying back home, I was like, this sucks. Like it just, oh man.
Well, think about it. It's. I don't think. It's tough, bro. It's tough. The long hauls are not. We're not. I don't think we're meant to do that stuff, right? I mean, I do it. I look at the. I look at the release. So this is my thing. I wake up in the morning. We get the release or the flight plan, generally around 4 hours before the flight.
Okay.
You know, so we get an email, and the first thing I do, I got wake up, I look at, and I go down to the flight time. It's the first thing I do, and then I see the flight time, and then I scream.
Yeah.
Dude, I've
Yeah.
seen 10 and a half, 11 hours. You just want to
Yeah.
cry, bro.
Yeah.
You know, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be tough. It can be tough. So you've been flying the Falcon for it seemed like several years now. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, yeah. Yeah, I've bounced off the funny thing, the first jet I started in was a Falcon 2000. That's what I went from, when I was a flight instructor, my first job, that time was PetSmart there. Falcon 2000.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so Falcon 2000 Classic, that's what I started in. Then went to ExoJet.
Is PetSmart still in business? No,
No, they're still in business, but they're not what they are. Yeah, there's no
man.
Bringing up bad scars there, Richard.
Anyways,
Yeah, no. The Falcon I started on, the Challenger 300, I flew for a company called ExoJet, did that for the charter, and then managed a guy's Challenger 300 out of Scottsdale for a couple years. Then I went back to the Falcon, and I flew the Falcon 2000 Classic and the Falcon 2000 EX Easy, which is basically the same airplane but just bigger engines, nicer avionics.
Okay.
What
does that include? The avionics. So in this particular aircraft, what are you expecting on the avionics? I mean, you're not.
So on this one, we're flying the it's Proline 21. So Honeywell, Rockwell Collins, FMSs, and Proline 21. Yeah, it's a pretty standard business aviation avionics suite. But it does everything you need to do.
So that's not a big like what's the huge emphasis areas when you're in training? It's not the it's not the FMS. It's not the big thing.
I would say that when you're starting out, I mean, kind of like anything, right? I mean, even Mark and you guys would know this. I mean, just even when you're flying the smaller planes, one of the challenges things you're looking at is trying to figure out how to work the GPS, right? Like that was one of your the challenging aspects was it, I mean, even the Garmin 430, right? It's like
I still haven't figured that thing out.
Yeah, so that definitely is, I think, for most people, especially when they go to an initial, which initial is where it's your first time going to train on this airplane specifically. Learning the avionics and learning the FMS is usually the most challenging aspect if you don't have any experience on it. Because flying the jet is flying the jet. I mean, yeah, certain systems might be different, and checklist procedures, emergency procedures might be a little bit different. But at the end of the day, the principles and rules of how you fly a jet is pretty straightforward and kind of standard across the board. Good operating procedures are good operating procedures. So I think if you come from a bad background, or if you come from a misguided background, I'll say, a company that didn't put a lot of emphasis on that, then yeah, you might struggle just in that regard. But usually I would say it's probably learning the avionics, learning the FMS is what takes people the longest to get acclimated and just, and to do it, quickly. And it's one thing to sit there at idle, and take your time, while you're waiting for passengers to get there to get things loaded up. But when you're, flying inbound at a busy airport and they change the arrival on you and they change the approach and they change, they need you to do all this stuff now, and you're over there scrambling, trying to get it all, reloaded, and it's weather and you're getting bounced around. I mean, when those things are happening, yeah, that's where, proficiency on that comes into play.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
what's the standard? Like, what is standard? Like nowadays, that's standard, right? Because because you fly, was it the Archer now? Is that what it is? You fly, Mark, a UND? Is it the Archers, or is it the
Archers? Yep.
Well, what's the standard now? Like, and they're all glass, right?
All
Glass.
G1000.
G1000s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what's some of the biggest issues you see with there? Do students have a hard time working the GPS, or they have a hard time trying to figure out the plane? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, as of now, I've only really done the private pilot, so I don't spend too much time teaching them GPS, right? A little bit during cross country, but I think for them, it's learning just as we did six packs, right? It's what they're learning for the first time, so it's all going to be new for them anyways. So they usually get a hang of it actually pretty quickly. It's the opposite, having all six packs. I mean, there's still things about the G1000 I'm trying to learn, let alone teach it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, the basics are, then as you go on through instrument, you learn a little bit more. So they get it in small chunks. And by the time they come out, I think they got a pretty good handle on it. But it's definitely a learning curve, especially when you get somebody who's already had experience, but not with a modern avionics system, for sure. That's tough.
Yeah, I would imagine. Do you? So, Mark, I'd be curious to know. So, do you find is it easier for them to learn the G1000 than it was for us to learn the six pack? Because is it just more intuitive in that regard?
Yeah, for sure. It's like to use all the bells and whistles, right? All the auxiliary capabilities, shall we say, of upgraded technology like that is what takes a while. Like, how do you get into the nearest page and pull out the frequencies and tell it where to go, right? So you don't have to dial in all the frequencies yourself. You could just pull them up, push them in. But the standard usage, I would say for sure, and that's the whole point of the upgraded system, right, is to enhance your scan, make things faster, make it easier, and it does for sure. Plus, nowadays, these guys are going into their check rides, and if they're doing their check rides or their final stages in an aircraft with the G1000, guess what? They don't have to explain anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have to explain the pitot-static system or how the wafers work, or so.
Oh, they got off easy.
Tell me about it.
You have a flashback just thinking about that crap.
When you have the G1000s, and we have like either I think it's an Aviation standby. We have some other Garmin standbys. Our planes don't even need magnetic compasses. There's no compass turns. There's no deviations that you need to know. So, if in total, they have it much easier than we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
iPads. Using iPads too. Remember we had to whip those charts out, man. Remember those charts? To fold those things.
No charts.
Oh, yeah. The paper charts, you had everything organized and in order in which you're going to go.
Fold it right and everything.
Oh yeah.
I remember Rex going, "Hey, just divert, Richard." He had to whip out the freaking. Oh my God.
Oh no! With the ForeFlight, which is what we use, we do loss procedures. We had to whip that paper chart out, get the plotter out, do your cross radials. All right, I'm on that radial. Draw a line. These guys, you punch in the VOR. The radial you're on, the distance, and it'll plot it for you, and you go, I'm right there. It takes 2 seconds.
Oh man.
Yeah.
When's the last time you flew on GA? Cameron? I'm about to go up with Mark.
It's been a couple years. My father-in-law actually used to have a Piper Warrior, believe it or not, an old. It was an Aero 3, like an old T-tail.
Nice.
It was a nice airplane. Yeah, he actually kept it over a Gateway, ironically. So I would do his, I would help him go out there and get current and do his, IPCs and all that stuff when I kept all my stuff current. I still do technically keep my.
You're still a CFI, right? You didn't.
Yeah. No, I'm not letting that thing lapse. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to do that again.
Dude, I remember Rex. I can still hear him. And he said that if you let that thing, I remember I said it to our class. And I said, if you guys let that thing lapse, do not come around me.
No.
Well, the CFI certificate technically does not expire anymore.
So I would like you to explain that to me now, because you're this. I just found that out. So when did that change happen, and educate me, please, on what the rule is now?
It's pretty simple, really, in the nutshell. It doesn't expire, but you still have to do. I forget what the FAA wants us to call it, because they don't want us to call it flight reviews anymore either. I'd have to look back to see. They like their picky language.
Yeah.
But yeah, you still have to do that refresher course basically every
Okay.
24 calendar months. But it doesn't expire. And once you do the refresher course, I believe you can just keep on trucking.
There's no expiration date. Is that what it is? Like it is now? That's removed?
You're correct, right? So if you went past the 24 calendar months and you didn't do the course, the refresher course, I'm not 100% sure, Cameron, what the penalty would be
Yeah.
because I do the refresher just like everybody else, and I sadly I know that this is kind of a horrible thing to admit, but being at UND, they kind of make sure that
Right.
I'm all up to date on everything anyway. So
They take care of all that for you.
yeah. But yeah, I'm not sure if you'd have to redo the check ride if you let it lapse. I'm not 100% sure. That'd be nice if you didn't. But there might be stipulation on experience at the same time. Like, have you passed? Have you written anybody off
Right.
for a check ride in the last however many calendar months or something like that? I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what that looks like now. I mean, I've got to imagine. I think I'm due this year for a refresher, so I'd be curious to know what that actually all looks like. But
I think the refresher part's going to be pretty much the same. I think you're going to be doing the same courses, the same stuff.
yeah,
I just did mine. Was it good? What's that platform you use?
American Flyers.
yeah,
American
American
Flyers.
American Flyers.
Yeah.
$100 lifetime membership.
Yeah, exactly.
You sold me.
Cool, man. As we transition back into talking about training and all that stuff. Have you ever seen? So you're a captain. You're a captain in the Falcon, and there's two captains. So in Part 91, you can have multiple captains.
Mhm.
And in Part 121, you can also have the same thing. If it's ever heard of augmented flight rules?
Mm-hmm.
Augmented. Okay.
Yeah.
If it's a long flight, you can have multiple crews and all that stuff. Same thing. You ever seen anybody? So what's the training fail out rate like on these platforms? Do you ever see anybody come in and just not make it?
Not at the recurrence. I've been at initials where they'll eventually make it, but you'll see candidates that they need more sim time, than the allotted amount that was given, and they won't be ready for the check ride type of thing. They got to come back and do a couple more sims, or where the case is. You see that every once in a while, not too often, but you do see that. The training, the training for these all these modern business jets, they're all pretty standard the way they do it. You go to basically a flight safety or a CAE. Those are your two primary training facilities, and you'll spend, if it's an initial, you'll spend anywhere from probably 2 weeks up to some are 30 days long. It just depends on the aircraft itself and what the requirements are for all the time they need. But you'll go there and you'll split it up. You'll do about if it's a 2 week type rating, you'll do probably half of that will be ground school and the other half will be cranking out sims. And then you'll do your check ride, oral flight tests, just like we did in flight school. Same format basically. And then we go every year. We go to recurrent, and recurrent's just a week long. It consists of 2 days of ground school and 2 days of simulators and a check ride. So, it's nice. I mean, it keeps you sharp.
Yeah.
Who does the Falcons right now? Like, where have you been going for your recurrent? And...
We go to CAE in Dallas.
Dallas.
They have the Falcon 2000 sims. They have a couple others there too, some Gulfstreams and Bombardiers. They have a whole bunch, but that's where we go for ours. And that's just because it's closest to. It's just most convenient. Flight safety is also out there, but we like CAE. CAE has a better lunch cafeteria area. So
well,
that's the selling point for us.
Okay. That's cool. I had a question I was going to ask, and I forgot it. It was important. Let me segue into it here. This is the part that if it was live, a big deal.
Yeah.
But anyways, one of the big thing in this area that I've seen throughout the years. Like I'm getting old now, man. I've been in the airlines now for God. It's like, bro. Anyways, but as I transition from certain aircraft, and I've transitioned from older to newer to older, because the 76 is like a 1980. You
Yeah.
know, well, it was a 1980 development technology. I think they came out in the 1990s. First Cat 3 and Autoland and all that stuff and blah blah. It was one of the first generational aircraft to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's old. It's old. Like the 76
Yeah.
it's an old bird. It's designed to be hand flown. I'm assuming the Falcon as well. Like you feel comfortable hand flying that thing, right? Like it's very responsive.
Oh yeah. Hand
Yeah.
flies like a sports car.
Like like a beauty. It's weird because the 76 hand flies like a sports car. I know it's weird. Well, I guess
Yeah.
not a sport. It's very responsive. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
maybe I don't know if it's a good way of putting it, but it's designed to be flown. Now there are some aircraft out there in the airline industry that's not. It's designed to be managed, right? It's not designed to be flown. And when you go through training, that's what you see when it comes to some of the things that people have a hard time with, is they can't handle the FMS because everything is it needs to be programmed from top to bottom. So you'll have guys who are really really good pilots, and I've seen all the time. They can hand fly shit out of that plane.
Mhm.
But then when it comes to like going in the box and putting certain things in there, they have a hard time doing that. You see anything like that, or it's not in
Yeah.
your case? It's relatively
Well,
pretty
no.
simple.
Again, not on a personal level that I've dealt with, but I have. We have been in training situations where you will have, and we actually primarily see this where it's guys who retire from the airlines. Maybe they took an early retirement or whatever, and now they're going to the business side of things because there's no age requirement there. So they may have left the airlines at whatever 60 something, whatever, instead of 65, 66, and they happen to land themselves a Gulfstream job, and they come into training for it, and they get worked pretty good, especially when it comes to some of the I think you kind of hit it, Richard, where at the airlines it's certainly depend on what airplane they were flying, but they were taught to manage the airplane, and you get back into a business side of things, a business jet, which can be managed very efficiently, but when things all start going wrong, you've got to start flying, and I think that is definitely shown to be an area of deficiency in a lot of, I think, aged out airline guys who are trying to come back in and kind of fly, more modern business jets. That they lost their flying skills. They lost their ability to, get out of that bubble that I think if you spend your career at the airlines, naturally it would happen. You just, it's very structured. It's very, like you said, you're managing an airplane on a profile the whole time. That's what you're doing. That's how they operate, and it's for efficiency. It's for safety. That's the model they run. But when you get into business aviation, and now you're doing V1 cuts, and you're doing engine out procedures out of Aspen or whatever it could be. Now things are a little bit different. So
I'll tell you a story. I won't say the airline's name. Mark know the airline.
Mark's
said
it.
I'll give you. I was going through a phase there. I left the airline, anyways. But I'll say this: I was flying this aircraft. It's fly-by-wire aircraft. Should I say what aircraft it is? No, whatever. Anyways, but it's designed to be programmed and managed and push buttons here and there and everything. Captain, I was going in as a captain. Flown this aircraft before, been a captain on this aircraft before, well versed, right? Now every company or any airlines or even airports or flight school have their own little culture, right? They do things the way they want to do things. You go in there, you expect to do things the way they want you to do it, no matter whether or not it's the right way or not. That's just how they do it. All right. Talking about hand flying. So it was getting vectored. All right. Autopilot's on. Everything's good. We got vectored to the final approach fix. All right. We're coming in on a GPS approach. Right. it takes a lot. Some of these aircraft that you have to program, it takes a lot of button pushing to like
Sure.
to program. Like, do you really want a vertical speed down on a on a path and all that stuff? Anyways, direct to the final approach fix. All right, going in there, we're over the final approach fix. I could technically allow the automation and press all these buttons and try and do it right, and trying to make sure the plane's on path. I decided, no, fuck all this. So I shut down the pilot off and hand fly, right? Because that's what pilots are supposed to do. It's a lot easier. It's a lot more efficient. You ain't worry about things going. Yeah. I only got lectured for it. So, okay, explain to me, why did you turn off the autopilot? Well, bro, we're over the final approach fix. The glide path is coming in quick. Instead of me looking up over there and trying to figure out what to push, I became a pilot and I hand flown the plane. Perfect approach. What's the problem? Well, I wanted. Yeah. So that's the stuff. That's the stuff is weird. You go to these places like you might go to another airline and expect you to hand fly. So yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk about automation and hand flying. A couple of days ago, I down here in downtown Phoenix, jumped in. Decided I want to get an Uber, booked the Uber, and the Uber sent. You know what Waymo is? You heard that?
Yeah, those driverless cars.
Yeah, so the Uber sent on the Uber. He sent a Waymo to come pick me up, which was the first time I saw that. It was pretty interesting. So I know that they're talking about AI automations and all that stuff, initially taking over all the jobs and taking over the airline and all that stuff. I'm curious, do you ever see that happening in the I don't see how that's even possible in the business.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I think people can make a compelling and solid case for it. I understand the arguments on it. I think that I just go back to. I think that you're going to see probably more. You'll probably see more. I'm not sure how and what capacity this will look like, but I'm sure we're going to own. It's only a matter of time before we start hearing about more AI in the cockpit type stuff, And I'm not sure to what capacity that's going to be, but I think the idea of not having, and this is no shot at single pilot operations, because that's just that's how they operate, and they're legal. They're allowed to do that, but I think in an operation where you are required to have two pilots and you're flying an airplane that is designed to have two pilots at all times, I think, you start to realize that, and people who don't fly or who aren't pilots, maybe not, they don't want to hear this, they won't know this, but mistakes are made all the time in the cockpit. I think all of us can attest to that. Whether, it doesn't matter if you're as a flight instructor, private pilot, whatever. Mistakes are made all the time. And the whole purpose of having two pilots is to, prevent those mistakes from being, compounded, and to back each other up and to catch one that might be doing something that they're not realizing they're doing, or whatever the case may be. I think that, getting away from that, I think is only going to cause more problems than it is going to cause solutions. Now, from like a bottom line standpoint, I'm sure, companies would be intrigued to say maybe we only need to have one pilot if we can have this artificial AI co-pilot in here now. But, I think from a passenger standpoint, and I think just from a safety standpoint, I don't know how you can really justify getting two, human pilots out of the cockpit. I just think that's just going to be, that'll be a long time if we ever see it.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark? I think,
Well,
I don't know.
That's by my theory is a company benefit standpoint, of course, if they don't have to pay pilots. But as far as passenger service goes, even if the technology was there and the FAA was willing to flatter it, the public wouldn't. And like Cameron said, and like you said before, Richard, maybe they will down the road. Our kids maybe, where they grow up with it. But at least for now, there's no way the public is going to get on a plane with no pilot. I definitely think we have some time to go before it happens. And we'd probably see it in the cargo region first, obviously. I mean, someone's got to be controlling something. I mean, when you're in the Waymo car, I mean, you just told me you turned off autopilot on final, so I can imagine. I imagine you got in that Waymo car and you were ready to jump in the driver's seat and be like, "I'm gonna turn this thing off if I need to."
Well,
Well,
I mean,
yeah. Well, what about that Waymo car that had that guy trapped? It was doing circles in the parking lot. Remember that?
Oh, right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
saw
I
that.
heard about that.
Yeah. I mean,
And,
that you
and the other
imagine
thing
an
is,
airplane.
when the Waymo cars get in trouble, guess who takes over? Now they're remotely controlled, but a human being takes over those cars. There's somebody watching them all the time.
Yeah.
Now, if we're gonna have somebody watching the plane all the time in the same capacity,
Yeah.
they might as well be sitting in the cockpit and not on the ground
Mm,
150 miles away.
Right. Yeah.
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 Well,
I agree.
well, I'll say this: the Waymo freaking car dropped me off, freaking whatever, like 0.2, 0.1 point whatever mile from my destination. So I had to freaking walk. I was like,
Yeah.
"What is this?"
Can't
So
do
I'm like,
that
"How
in an
do I?"
airplane.
Like in an Uber, you can like adjust it. I'm like, I'm not getting
Yeah.
out here. I'm trying to figure out. And I'm like, oh, fuck,
Or
and I had to
you
get
can
out.
tell, hey, we're not there yet. Keep going.
Yeah, dude. So I was. Oh, that's my leg there. You know, right there.
It's
But
hot.
anyways, yeah. My thoughts on that stuff is this is my thoughts, and I know like JetBlue and Airbus did it. Let me know when your time is getting close, Cameron. We'll wrap it up. But I know JetBlue and Airbus did a study like a few years back, and they wanted to do like some kind of research to figure out if this can work or not. But I think, do you have kids, Cameron? I'm curious. Did
No.
you ever? No, neither do I. So I know Mark is out there having a bunch of kids, but when Mark's kids, grandkids, I
Stop.
think
My
that's what's
mom
going
might be
to happen.
listening.
I think maybe our kids, I think, because that's all they'll know. Because I mean, Tesla's coming out with the new taxi and bus. I mean, these kids nowadays, they're jumping out Waymo like it's nothing. They don't even second thought. You know, I think that's what's gonna happen, because that's what they said about the flight engineers. By the way, the pilots made a very compelling, whatever debate or conversation about removing the flight engineers.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't comprehend that being happening, right? And the airlines were like, "Oh yeah, you want to bet?" You know. So the thing that Airbus and I think it was JetBlue and Airbus. There's probably an article out there. They had what's called a ground dispatcher or flight dispatcher or something like that on the ground, and that dispatcher oversees multiple aircraft, and there's a single pilot in the cockpit, and then within the cockpit there's an automated system that responds to triggers. So when the single pilot says gear up at a specific segment of the flight, the aircraft understands it and does it. Even the 737 does it right now. Like the 737, the aircraft says V1 for you, versus other aircraft, the FO has to do it. Yeah. So 737, so when you're rolling down, the 737 will say V1, right? And then, so for example, something like that. And then you have the master dispatcher. It was a master dispatcher on the ground. So for example, if that pilot passes out or something while he's flying, that master dispatcher can take over. And also the 76, which is old generation aircraft, that thing, you can do autoline with that thing, right? I mean 0 visibility, you don't see crap. That thing comes in, land and brake. It's just that go ahead. It's just additional stuff that I don't know how they would figure that out. For example, like we had an issue with we had to turn back. We're going to Japan. We had to turn back from our departure airport, but we had to figure out like overweight landing and and all that stuff that you had to know how to figure that stuff out as a pilot. But technically, you could do that on the ground, like have the dispatchers figure that stuff on the ground and all that stuff. So, yeah, man, I know it's pretty crazy, but yeah. Well, they're saying within like several years, that this AI stuff is getting out of hand, man.
It could. I mean, it could. I think that to Mark's point, I think the sectors you're going to see probably cargo get hit with it first, as a trial run. And then you would probably, the likelihood that that's ever going to get into the private sector just doesn't really make sense because there's no way to really, carry that out. I mean, I don't even know what the infrastructure would look like to have that for the private side. But, the airlines would obviously be the next in line. But I mean, I think it's going to be a twofold kind of thing. One, just, public trust, and are they going to, do they take a gamble on, will people want to be, getting on an airplane where there's not two pilots? I think is going to, that's going to take a lot of, I think, public trust to have,
the private sector definitely. The infrastructure is not there because it's just so random, right? It's random. Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, I mean, we'll a few last things here. We'll wrap it up. I guess we could talk about some of the cool, airports. What's some of the cool places you've been? Obviously, you've been to Aspen. I've never been to Aspen.
Oh yeah, Aspen. I mean, it's it can be an uneventful airport, but it can also be a very challenging airport depending on the conditions. It's like most mountain flying, I'll tell you one of the more interesting things we did was actually on our way over to Europe. We were going to stop in Iceland, and we left Seattle, and our first fuel stop was this place called Equalit. You guys ever heard of Equalit?
No, I've not.
Yeah. Airport identifier is Charlie Yankee Foxtrot Bravo. I had to write this down so I didn't forget it. Equalit. It's up there north of Newfoundland. Basically, like just right there, middle parallel of north of Greenland, basically. If you go up there, but it is like a where they have, what do you call it? First Nations kind of people live there. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere. We were flying up over like Hudson Bay, snow mass covered landscape for hours. Yeah. I mean, way north.
Hey, can I cut you off for a second?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I learned this the other day. First Nations is Canadian for Indian.
That's what it is. That's what they are. Yeah. Good job.
Interesting.
That's awesome. That's who they are, Mark. That's good. That's awesome. What are the odds that you learned that the other day, too?
I learned that the other day.
That's awesome. Oh, man. I didn't know what it meant either at the time. I was just like, but it was pretty wild, though. And again, it's in the middle of nowhere. All of a sudden, you got this village and this long runway, but it's all snow around you. And it's like that. I mean, imagine going to Hawaii where you're over water for 5 hours. I felt like that was us, but flying over snow and just nothing else, like no civilization for hours until we arrived at this airport. So that was pretty wild. Another airport. What's that?
Go ahead. What kind of approach was it you had going in there?
Oh, it was a sunny day, just like that picture. We did a VFR right into it. Visual, visual right into it. Yeah, it was cool. Got fuel there. We did customs there, and then we did then there's like another 3-hour flight. I think about a 3-hour flight, maybe a little less than that, over to Iceland, and then we stopped there for a couple nights. So
Iceland was there Reykjavik?
Yep.
Reykjavik.
Yep, Reykjavik. Yeah, you can go into Keflavik as well. Keflavik is the big airport, and Reykjavik is the smaller one, more centralized. Iceland's. I've been there before. That's a good place.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So on the 135, you're flying corporate. What do you need to do in preparation as a pilot, as far as standardization or anything like that goes before you can fly to Europe? Like, do you have to go do some kind of standardization and like training on their rules or this, that, or the? I know most of it's ICAO, so it's going to be pretty much the same thing. But what's the process for getting ready to do something like that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, so most operators, I know with 135, we had to do international procedures, what we called it. So you had to take a class. You can do it online. I think it's called Scotty IPC or Scotty something. is like a big international online procedures course you can take that will kind of give you the requirements to show that you are current on international procedures. But you can also go to like a lot of the training facilities, or some of these companies even have like in-house, programs where they'll do it. You go to a ground school for like a day, and you just go over all the procedures. Most of it is particular to like flying the tracks. So if you're going to be operating on the flight levels, going across the Atlantic, that's where most of the stuff is concentrated at. Outside of that, so some of the nuances, like over in Europe, we, how here in the U.S. we have our standard, altitude above 18,000 feet. We change it to 992. Well, over there, they all have different altitudes they do it at. Some is like 5,000 feet, some is 8,000 feet. Some it's just you got to reference the charts to make sure that you understand when does it go from standard or whatever. So like those things are kind of just little gotchas. And then obviously the language barrier to a degree. I mean, they all speak English, but some of them are
so do it better than others. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's many times where I'm just saying, say again, just lower. But that's usually what you're going to expect. Now I think there are probably some Part 91 guys who just, just like the Wild West, they just go over and just say, screw it. But I mean, I think the prudent pilot would be you want to have some proficiency on it, or at least have somebody in the cockpit who is experienced on it.
Right.
And again, mostly if you're going over the tracks, you got to be. Like going over there, we didn't. Well, and coming back, we just went above the track. We didn't do the tracks. We stayed far enough north to where we just went to Iceland and then went down over the UK and all that. But and on the way home, we just went up to flight level 430 before we coasted out. So we were above the track. So we were just doing your typical HF position reports, but we weren't actually on the tracks, which just that's again kind of the nice thing about private jets is that we can get above all that stuff. Where a lot of the airlines, you're just too heavy; they just can't do it. But they're also designed, and it's that's their operation, so they're used to doing it, and they just do it really, really well. But
interesting.
Yeah,
it's a lot of I fly the tracks a lot. It's a lot of ETOPS and and all that stuff. You have to ETOPS stuff, extended operation, and then you have to do the know how to get on and get. I don't think you'll get clearance anymore for the track, but if you get off the track, you don't know how to do that. And then SOL call and all that stuff that goes with it, which can be a pain in the ass.
There is quite a bit of stuff. I mean, you gotta if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna be in a world of hurt.
Another quick question for you both. So ETOPS, does that obviously when you do an ETOPS flight, there's extra maintenance checks you have to do and extra rules you have to follow, this, that, and the other. But as far as the aircraft, they have to be ETOPS certified, right? So does that happen as the aircraft is in production and comes out as an ETOPS, or does your company that I own this plane as a Part 91, I need to reach out and get it ETOPS certified?
Correct. Yeah. So the company and everybody, it's just like a manual. You draft your ETOPS procedure, you send it to FAA. And then the FAA runs it with you and test it, and you do a proof and run, and they approve it. So, and then everybody's ETOPS certified, the crew, the aircraft, and then usually, if you look at the aircraft on the bottom, it'll also like ETOPS on the bottom. But you can also lose it as well if you don't do it right and all that stuff. So it's a company certification that you get.
Yeah. And I know, a lot of guys on the private side, they get into problems just going over to Europe, where you'll get, they call them, they're ramp checks, but they call them SAFA checks. And there's a lot of things you got to make sure you have all buttoned up, not just the ETOPS stuff, but, everything from pilot, trainings, medicals, all that stuff. Everything on board's got to be current and inspected, life rafts, vests. I mean, it's a whole, they can take up a lot of your time just making sure that you are legal to be having that airplane over there, registrations, all that stuff. It seems simple enough, but there's a lot of things that, when you're just flying in the U.S., you just don't think about it,
Right.
So, if you're a one-off operator that kind of goes there once a year, it really does pay to kind of make sure you know everything you got to be done correctly and have with you, and otherwise, you can get into some problems for sure.
Yeah, the tracks can be like if you have an engine failure. If say you're at, I don't know, 370 or something like that, you have an engine failure, and the track separation is 1,000 feet, above each other, whatever it is, and the tracks they're below each other, depending how it could be depending on winds and certain different things. So if you lose an engine, you can't just simply just descend, because you might descend down to an aircraft that's below you. So first you got to get off the track. There's a procedure for that. Then you got to get below the track, so you're not gonna. And then you can turn to your if you're gonna divert to somewhere, you can turn to your alternate. But you can't just do anything. So it can be a very complicated process, even like for weather. So if there's like weather, there's a thunderstorm in front of you, and you're trying to get, sometimes you can be like, oh, fuck it. Fuck it. I'm not going to find that thunderstorm, because you can't get a hold of it. There's no radio reception, right? You're on HF, so maybe cell call or whatever.
The nice thing too is more modern day jets have like the CptsLogs, the controller pilot link. Mark, I'm sure you know what that is. That stuff is like text messaging for aircraft now to controllers. So that makes things a lot cleaner, which is nice. But not every aircraft has it. Not everyone knows how to use it. So, that is definitely, I think, the future of communication for all that oceanic stuff. Is just everyone's going to be on CptsLogs, and the radios will be much quieter. Everything will be done by text messaging to the airplane.
Yeah. He'll just be getting text messages, meow.
Yeah.
I heard my first meow on 121 the other day. I was satisfied.
Did you?
Yeah.
If you go to Asia or like, it's all CptsLogs. Like you don't. I mean, they talk every so often.
Right.
And I was flying, like I was jump seating on an American 7-8. I think I was coming back to Phoenix. I think it's out of Miami. And they CptsLogs. Like there's certain aircraft in the U.S. that's able to do it in the U.S. So there was no radio communication. It was all CptsLogs over the U.S., which is, but we can't. Most aircraft are unable to do it in the U.S. But I think you're initially going towards that, right?
Yeah, because a lot of business aircraft can do it. Like my old aircraft could do it, and we actually have it on ours. We just don't have it. It's through our third FMS system, and we just don't have really. We don't need it, so we don't use it. But yeah, I definitely hear it more and more now, where I'll hear a controller come on and ask an aircraft, "Hey, did you get the CptsLogs I just sent you? Are you guys able to log on or not?" And so it sounds like they are trying to integrate it more with some of these airlines that are using it now, which I think is great. I mean, I think the more you can free up the radios, the safer that is for everyone. For the people who actually do have an emergency or do have, need actual assistance with things, not everyone else is waiting to get on, so they can, they just would help, I think, alleviate that congestion.
Well, before I let you go here, I'm going to show you an airport that I find very fascinating. I remember doing this the first time, and it freaked me the hell out. I couldn't believe what the hell I was looking at. This was back when it was at American Eagle as an FO, going into JFK. It was the JFK RNAV GPS Zulu runway 13 left. You ever flown to JFK?
I have, and I'll tell you that a lot of our training when I was at ExoJet, we did training every 6 months because it was 135. Every simulator exam, every flight, every check ride was out of JFK. Everything. I'm 1-1 right or something like that, and 1-1 left maybe. If I remember correctly, 4 right, 4 left.
The 4 left, 4 right. But this is an interesting approach, and I remember doing this for the first time, and it blew me the hell away. I thought, let's see here, it was pretty interesting here. So let's see, and then we'll. So let's see here. You see this here? How does that look? So this was. Let's see if I can. It's not too loud. Mute it. So you see these lights here?
Where you look, yeah.
So basically, those are it's almost like a visual approach.
Yeah.
So low visibility, you're looking for that light, right? And then
Mm.
once you get to that light, you immediately need to look for the next one. So where's the next one? You're like, where is it? Oh, there it is. You turn towards it.
Oh,
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then you find that one. You're like, where's the next one? Oh shit, where's the next one? Oh, there it is. You turn. Dude, so that's what's going on in the cockpit. Oh shit, where's the next one? Where's the next one? Oh, we got to get down. Get down. Get
Yeah.
down.
That's pretty cool. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. No, think about doing that in low visibility.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right,
that
Oh,
would
there it is.
be-
Turn.
let's see AI navigate that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then you're like, okay, there it is. And then you're like, oh, we should see the runway. Where the fuck is the runway?
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
There it is. Oh shit.
Yeah,
and,
get
then,
down.
and then finally,
Does
so
this,
that's
so
really
does
what it
this,
was.
does this
Huh?
correspond? Oh, you said it corresponds with the GPS approach.
It doesn't. So
It doesn't.
no, you have to. It takes you to a point, then it stops, and then you have to start looking for these lights. If you don't
Ah,
find it, you got to do a miss.
that is
Please.
funky. Wow.
That's
Yeah,
why it's
That
fucking
is
crazy.
That's
Yeah.
different. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, Cameron, man, we should do this more often, my friend. You should come back on.
Yeah, we should do this again. Absolutely. I think I know there's probably more we can talk about, and
Definitely.
absolutely, love to give more insight where people want to know. So
Yeah, man, come back on, hang out with me and Mark. Like I said, the last episode we did, people thought it was pretty interesting. Listen to you, your insights and your experience and all that stuff. So, come back, be a regular guest. We'll talk more. Thanks again for signing me off. Even though how much did I pay you, by the way? Did I pay you?
Yeah. I think you still owe me. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, didn't you and I do some flights together?
No, we never flew together.
We never flew together.
No. You're one of the few I never flew with.
I remember seeing you. I remember seeing you around the building all the time. But
I'm still around those buildings, so if you guys ever want to come by and say hello, I could blow the socks off Rex if I brought you two over with me to say hello.
that would be
that'd be
awesome.
good. Yeah,
We should do a surprise drop on him.
we should do it, man.
He'd be floored.
Let's do it, man. You golf. I see you golf all the time, Cameron.
I do golf. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I'm not as
golf?
good as you. I mean,
Yeah,
Mark golfs. Do you still golf, right, Mark?
I can see
Mark is
Mark
pretty-
golf. Mark's probably a good golfer. I could see.
Yeah,
that.
he is. He's a good. Yeah. Look at
Yeah.
him. being
I'm good
awesome.
enough to not piss anybody off.
Yeah, he's one of those like kind of secret scratch guys.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. He acts like he's not
Please.
good, and you see him, and he just freaking pipes the ball.
You will be sorely disappointed, my friend, if those are your expectations if we go golfing.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Let's definitely book something. I think Andrew. So what we'll do next time, we should definitely get like you, Andrew, and Rex on.
we should
five.
do all. Yeah, we should do something. That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
That'd be great. Us five just talk about it. What do you think, Mark? It's probably a good idea. I know we're trying to get Rex on. I know you wanted to come on.
Yeah,
that'd be
definitely.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have some good stories and nothing else. Some good, just reminiscence on things, and that'd be fun. But
Yeah, definitely. Have you heard from Andrew lately? Is he still out there doing his thing?
I just saw Andrew the other week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we keep in touch quite a bit. Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right. I need to give him a call.
yeah.
So he'll probably be on sometime, Mark, and then we'll do maybe us four, and then we'll include Rex
that'd be fun,
afterwards.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
and
be
then-
cool, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then what we'll do is if you want to come on every so often and be a regular guest, we'll have some American captain come on, and you guys can talk and all that stuff. So it'll be good.
Absolutely.
But Mark, anything you wanted to add, my friend, before we head out?
No, I think we're about out of time, but I'll have some stuff for another podcast.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Yeah, the next one we do is probably just gonna be me and you. So this is live. I'll see how it looks. I think we did pretty good overall with the live stuff. But anyways, Cameron was great. We'll talk soon, my friend.
Thank you guys
And,
for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, come back soon. We'll have you back soon. One
All
good
right, guys.
pilot.
Yep.
See. Adios.
Yep. Talk to you guys.